Welcome to this deep dive where we take detailed source material and distill the most powerful and often surprising insights.
Today, we are undertaking a really focused teaching discussion centered on the scriptures.
And specifically, we're looking at a masterful composition from the Book of Psalms. This exploration is drawn from the comprehensive series developed by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
It is, and it's a critical study, I think, for anyone who's navigating times of chaos, because our focus today is squarely on Psalm 9.
Right, attributed to King David.
Exactly. And this song is foundational. It doesn't just record a feeling, it documents a sort of strategic and emotional journey. It moves David from this place of intense personal peril and lament to a place of unshakable confidence and declarative public praise.
And what makes this psalm so compelling is the title itself, isn't it? It's not just a private diary entry. It starts,
Yeah.
to the chief musician upon Muthlabben, a psalm of David.
Yes.
That phrase, Muthlabben, immediately clues you into the fact that this personal crisis was meant for public performance for the chief musician to arrange.
That's it. Muthlabben is often translated as the death of the son, or maybe more broadly, a musical instruction concerning the death of the hero or champion.
Wow.
So this isn't just a lament, it's a victory song over a defeated enemy. David is writing a song of triumph, maybe while he's still in the midst of the battle. He's framing his personal fear into public, celebratory worship.
That reframing is really the mission of our discussion today. We're going to trace that powerful arc anchored by the core truth we've extracted from these sources.
Which is?
Praise is power, declaring God's sovereignty when evil reigns. How does David transition from fearing the gates of death, which we'll see later, to declaring God's eternal rule over everything? Let's unpack this.
And do it.
So David starts not with a complaint, but with a promise. And this intentionality, it just sets the stage for the entire rest of the psalm. Let's look at this opening declaration, this profound vow of allegiance in the first two verses.
I'll read them.
Please do.
I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will show forth all thy marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in thee. I will sing praise to thy name, O Most High.
That's Psalm 9, verses 1 and 2 from the King James Version.
The emphasis on I will is so
Yeah.
important. It's a statement of will, not emotion.
Right.
David is demonstrating an act of intentional, sovereign choice, and it's regardless of his circumstances. But the most powerful phrase here has to be, with my whole heart.
Okay, so what does that comprehensive commitment, that whole heart, what does that really entail in this context?
Well, it speaks to the totality and focus of his devotion. It's the antithesis of the way we often approach things today. Our attention is fragmented, right? It's pulled between responsibilities, screens, worries. Wholehearted praise is total concentration.
So he's saying his worship won't be half-hearted.
Exactly. Not distracted or conditional on whether things are going well. It's an all-encompassing commitment of his mind, his will, and his emotions.
And that focus on the whole heart seems like a prerequisite for genuine faith. You see this mirrored in the most central commandments, the requirement to love God with all your being.
You do.
But David doesn't stop there. He immediately moves to external expression, promising to show forth all thy marvelous works.
Absolutely. And this is where the praise transitions from an internal discipline to a public testimony. That's why it was set to music.
Ah, okay.
David's commitment is dual. He experiences the praise internally, yes, but he must broadcast it externally for the world and specifically for his enemies to witness. To show forth means to publish, to proclaim, to display.
So if David is facing extreme trouble, what's the strategic value of recounting marvelous works? Isn't that just spiritual nostalgia looking back at the good old days?
No, not at all. It's a cognitive anchor, and it's highly strategic.
So?
Well, when fear and chaos are reigning, your mind naturally focuses on the immediate threat. So David is proactively interrupting that fear cycle by forcing himself to recount God's past faithfulness, his marvelous works. And these works aren't just miracles on a grand national scale like the Exodus.
Okay.
They include God's personal deliverances in David's own history. His salvation, his protection from Saul, his anointing. By recalling irrefutable evidence of God's power, he literally shifts the balance of power in his own mind.
And the ultimate goal of all this active, wholehearted praise leads to joy. I will be glad and rejoice in thee.
Precisely. And notice the direction of the joy. It's not, I will rejoice because I won the battle.
Right.
It's, I will rejoice in thee. The object of his joy is the unchanging character of God, whom he addresses as, O Most High.
That title, Elion in Hebrew, is so powerful.
It is. It recognizes God's supreme authority and sovereignty above all earthly powers, above all his enemies. So when your joy is rooted in the Most High, who never changes, your joy becomes independent of the temporary conditions on the ground.
And we see that language of wholehearted devotion defining faithful commitment all through the scriptures.
Indeed, it's David's operational standard. In Psalm 138, chapter 1, verse 1, he again declares, "I will praise thee with my whole heart." It wasn't a one-time spiritual high for him.
Yeah.
It was the foundation of his relationship. If the goal of faith is full communion, it requires giving your full self.
Let's pull the practical thread here. If David's wholeheartedness is a strategic move to disrupt fear, what does this challenge the modern listener to do?
I think it challenges us to intentionality and documentation.
Documentation.
Yes.
Okay.
First, stop letting worship be a passive reaction. Make a conscious, decisive commitment to choose praise before your circumstances change.
Okay.
Second, start documenting those marvelous works.
Yeah.
We need to actively cultivate a habit of recollection, creating a mental catalog of God's past faithfulness.
So you have something to draw on.
Exactly. This catalog acts as your immediate counter-argument whenever doubt or fear tries to dominate your thinking. It means consciously deciding to focus on the eternal nature of the Most High, rather than allowing temporary problems to hold your joy hostage.
That's a powerful first step.
This discipline is the very first strategic step David takes when faced with overwhelming odds.
So David has made his personal vow. Now he anchors that praise in the absolute nature of reality. God's role as the eternal and perfectly righteous judge. This is the justification for his confidence.
He shifts from self-talk to God-talk. He moves from his commitment to the unwavering power of the divine.
Let's look at verses 3 and 4, which immediately connect God's inherent nature to David's personal battlefield victory. I'll read these.
God.
When mine enemies are turned back, they shall fall and perish at thy presence. For thou hast maintained my right and my cause. Thou satest in the throne, judging right.
Notice the clarity of the causality there. The enemies don't fall because David has better weapons or a larger army. They fall and perish at thy presence. This is a staggering theological truth. The mere, simple presence of God is sufficient to defeat all opposition.
They're not just repelled.
No, they're consumed by the sheer, unapproachable majesty of the divine king.
That suggests the power dynamic is utterly absolute. The enemy doesn't stand a chance against God simply being present.
Which makes our struggle less about physical strength and more about aligning ourselves with the divine presence.
Right.
And this brings us to the second, immensely comforting aspect. David sees God as his personal advocate, for thou hast maintained my right and my cause.
This isn't just generic protection.
No, this is God stepping into the legal and personal dispute, taking up David's defense and ensuring justice is served.
In the ancient world, having a powerful advocate was everything, especially if you were up against a stronger opponent. David is saying his advocate is literally the highest authority in the universe.
He is. And that authority is emphasized by the image of God sitting on a prepared throne, judging right.
That image, the seated, prepared judge.
It assures us that judgment is not arbitrary or hastily decided. It's methodical, authoritative, and perfectly aligned with justice.
This idea of God as the ultimate impartial judge connects directly to one of the earliest and most vital theological questions in Scripture.
Absolutely. Think back to Abraham interceding for the righteous in Sodom. That's Genesis 18, chapter 25. He asked the foundational question, shall not the judge of all the earth do right?
And David is answering that question here.
He answers it with deep assurance. He sees God actively judging and maintaining his right, affirming that, yes, the ultimate authority is not only powerful, but perfectly fair.
So when a listener is experiencing a specific, acute injustice, betrayal, a legal battle, professional unfairness, how do we practically apply the knowledge that God sits on this prepared throne?
The practical takeaway is liberation from the burden of self-defense.
I like that.
We are not required to be our own avengers or constantly struggle to prove our case to mortal men. We entrust our right and cause to the one who sits on the eternal throne.
That doesn't mean we are passive, though.
No, but it means we proceed with the confidence that the ultimate authority is already on our side, judging right. It allows us to trade anxious self-justification for confident, patient waiting for divine timing.
David then expands his scope, moving from personal enemies to the heathen, the nations that are opposed to God. Verses 5 and 6 describe the absolute, permanent consequences of opposing this divine judge.
Here they are. Thou hast rebuked the heathen, thou hast destroyed the wicked, thou hast put out their name forever and ever. O thou enemy, destructions are come to a perpetual end, and thou hast destroyed cities, their memorial is perished with them.
The language here is so final.
It's hyperfinal. God's judgment is decisive.
Mm.
To put out their name forever and ever means more than just killing the wicked leader. It means eradicating their legacy, their influence, their very memory.
Their memorial is perished with them.
Right. They leave no historical footprint.
In a world that's obsessed with legacy, that is the ultimate verdict of insignificance. It assures the believer that the power and influence of wicked regimes or individuals is strictly temporary.
And ultimately meaningless.
Yes.
It is the ultimate perspective check. I mean, think of the tyrannies and empires that once seemed unshakable. Babylon, Assyria, Rome, they were massive, brutal. They seemed eternal.
And yet they fell.
They fell, often just dissolving into history. David assures us that this is not an accident. It is a divine decree. God holds absolute sovereignty over human history, ensuring that the influence of wickedness is fundamentally temporary.
And this prophetic promise of finality is confirmed in the visions of the New Testament regarding the end of evil itself.
Precisely. It provides a solid line of continuity. Look at Revelation 20, chapter 10. It details the final fate of the devil, the primary antagonist. He's cast into the lake of fire and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever.
It's the same concept.
The exact same concept. The final destruction of the greatest opposition is absolute, perpetual, and beyond reversal. And that certainty of the end of evil provides the bedrock you need to withstand prolonged suffering in the present.
This makes the transition in verses 7 and 8 so powerful. It explicitly contrasts the fleeting nature of man's destruction with the absolute, enduring nature of God.
I'll read those. But the Lord shall endure forever. He has prepared his throne for judgment, and he shall judge the world in righteousness. He shall minister judgment to the people in uprightness.
That small word, but, it's a huge pivot point.
It's a theological pivot point, exactly. Wicked empires vanish, their names are forgotten, but the Lord shall endure forever. His reign is continuous and unbroken.
And the description of his throne is crucial.
It is. He has prepared his throne for judgment. In the ancient Near East, kings often sat on temporary or mobile thrones. But God's throne is prepared. It is fixed, established, and eternal. It's secured specifically for the perfect execution of justice.
What was the political significance of a prepared throne back in David's time?
It signaled permanence, legitimacy, and inescapable authority. Unlike human kingdoms that require constant military maneuvering to stay in power, God's rule is inherent. It requires no defense. His power is stable.
And the quality of that rule is emphasized. He judges in righteousness and in uprightness.
A dual guarantee of perfect justice, universally applied to all people.
The implication being, unlike human courts, where biases and resources can determine the outcome, God's judgment is clean, pure, and without fault.
Exactly. And this focus on future, universal judgment is a central theme carried right into the New Testament. The Apostle Paul, speaking to the skeptical Athenians in Acts 17, chapter 31, confirms this reality.
What does he say?
He says that God hath appointed a day in the which he will judge the world in righteousness by that man whom he hath ordained. It reassures us that every single wrong committed in human history will eventually be brought before the perfectly just king.
That's powerful context. Knowing this eternal righteous king is on the throne, what does this motivate us to do now?
Well, it provides profound hope. It stabilizes our worldview.
Yeah.
But practically, this truth should motivate us toward consistent righteous living today.
Okay.
If you believe that all your actions, your thoughts, your words, even the ones hidden from other humans, will ultimately be judged by a perfect eternal standard, it encourages you to live with intentional integrity.
Our hope is secure, but our conduct matters now.
Exactly. We are accountable, yet ultimately hopeful, because the judge is righteous.
So David now brings this concept of the great cosmic judge down to a personal, compassionate level. He shifts focus to God as the protector of the vulnerable, the ultimate refuge.
That's right. He zooms in from the universal to the personal.
Let's read verses 9 and 10. These verses offer one of the most comforting images of God's personal care in the whole Bible.
They do. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. And they that know thy name will put their trust in thee. For thou, Lord, hast not forsaken them that seek thee.
The word refuge, it's a military term, isn't it?
It is. It often means a high, safe fortress or a stronghold, an impenetrable structure designed specifically for protection. And David promises this fortress to two groups, the oppressed and those in times of trouble.
He's speaking directly to the vulnerable.
To those who have no other defense. When the world is collapsing and injustice seems to be winning, God is the unshakable safe haven that the enemy cannot penetrate.
I find the connection in verse 10 fascinating. Knowing God's name leads directly to trust. Why is that specific connection between knowledge and trust so crucial?
Because it's the foundational mechanism of faith. Knowing God's name isn't about pronunciation.
No.
It's about experiential knowledge of his character, his power, and his track record. It means knowing he is the Elyon, Most High, the righteous judge, the faithful deliverer. If you truly know that he is faithful, then trusting him becomes a logical response. It's not just an emotional leap.
His nature guarantees his protective actions.
Precisely. And David seals that security with a promise that cuts through any fear of abandonment. Thou, Lord, hast not forsaken them that seek thee.
It's the ultimate guarantee of loyalty.
It is. Those who actively seek him, who run toward the fortress, are never left exposed. The source material draws a strong parallel here to Proverbs 18, chapter 10.
Which says,
The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. It's an architectural defense built upon God's own character.
and the sources also cite Exodus, reminding us that God is not just passively watching from that fortress.
That's right. In Exodus 3, chapter 7, God tells Moses, I have surely seen the affliction of my people and have heard their cry. God sees the trouble, he hears the prayer, and he provides the refuge. He's personally and compassionately involved.
So, if a listener is feeling overwhelmed right now, maybe paralyzed by the weight of their current circumstances, what is the practical, immediate instruction David gives here?
The instruction is to run to the name. When you're overwhelmed, the practical step is not to withdraw into isolation, but to actively seek God in prayer and meditation. And crucially, you must intentionally remind yourself of his character. Rehearse the stories of his faithfulness. This knowledge is what systematically dismantles fear and builds unshakable trust. We trust him because we know him, and then knowing is what builds the impenetrable fortress around us.
And because God is this perfect judge and this impenetrable refuge, David transitions back to the natural response, public worship and sharing that truth. Verses 11 and 12 call us to both internal praise and external declaration.
Sing praises to the Lord, which dwelleth in Zion. Declare among the people his doings. When he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them. He forgetteth not the cry of the humble.
This is a call to worship and testimony.
It is. Zion, the city of God, is the focal point of the praise, reminding us that worship is centered where God has chosen to place his presence, and we are to declare among the people his doings.
So our personal experience of God's refuge is not meant to be a secret.
Not at all. It's meant to be shared as evidence of his power. We become evangelists, in a way, showcasing God's actions.
The profound reason David insists on this public declaration is linked to God's judicial activity described in the next line. When he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them.
That phrase, maketh inquisition for blood, is incredibly powerful. It means he actively, meticulously investigates injustice.
As a detective.
Exactly. God is not just broadly aware of suffering. He is an active detective, seeking justice for those whose lives have been unjustly taken or ruined. He remembereth them, meaning he holds the victims in his active memory, ensuring accountability.
And the final affirmation, he forgetteth not the cry of the humble, is a stunning contrast to the fleeting nature of the wicked nations we discussed earlier.
It is the final reassurance for the marginalized. When the world ignores the poor, the humble, and the afflicted, God hears them, investigates their plight, and actively works to restore their honor and secure justice.
That certainty should fuel their praise.
It should. The humble may feel voiceless to the world, but their cry is paramount in the courts of heaven.
So if we accept the charge to declare his doings, what's the practical implication for our storytelling, how we talk about our lives?
It encourages us to frame our personal life events as testimony. We're challenged to look at our deliverance, large or small, and share it publicly, demonstrating that God is still active, still judging, and still providing refuge.
When we share our stories, we aren't just boosting ourselves.
No, we are declaring his doings. And for the times we feel marginalized, we lean hard on the fact that God is running an active inquisition on our behalf, and he will never forget the cry of the humble.
So David now uses the theological truths he just established, God is the judge, God is the refuge, as the premise for his direct personal request for aid.
He does. He's building his case for God to act.
Verses 13 and 14 perfectly capture David's vulnerability while revealing a higher, almost selfless motive for his rescue.
I'll read them. Have mercy upon me, O Lord. Consider my trouble, which I suffer of them that hate me. Thou that liftest me up from the gates of death, that I may show forth all thy praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. I will rejoice in thy salvation.
He presents his request using two compelling arguments.
He does. First, he outlines his present trouble, noting he's facing literal hatred and is near the gates of death, the point of no return.
And second,
Second, he reminds God of his own track record. Thou that liftest me up from the gates of death. This is David praying based on historical evidence of God's faithfulness.
wait a minute. David is asking for rescue from life-threatening trouble, but his primary motive for wanting to be saved isn't to be comfortable or safe.
No, and this is the surprising brilliance of David's prayer model. His motivation is purely focused on the public glory of God.
He wants deliverance so that he can praise God publicly.
Yes, so that he can show forth all thy praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. The gates of Zion were the central, most visible place of public gathering, commerce, and legal proceedings.
So his personal rescue is designed to become a spectacle.
A public testimony that amplifies God's saving power to the entire community. His deliverance is a platform.
That completely reframes how we should view our own prayers for help. We shouldn't just be focused on the comfort we receive, but the testimony it creates.
Absolutely. The source material cites Philippians 4, chapter 6, where we are instructed to bring specific requests to God. In everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God.
And David models the ideal way to do this.
Yes, we articulate our specific need, but we tie the desired outcome to God's glory. We ask for rescue, not just for our own relief, but so that our eventual freedom becomes a public, irrefutable proof of God's saving strength.
Having pleaded for divine action, David now affirms his trust in the mechanics of God's justice. Verses 15 and 16 perfectly describe the concept often referred to as boomerang justice.
It's a powerful description. Let me read it. The heathen are sunk down in the pit that they made. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. The Lord is known by the judgment which he executeth. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Yagai, Selah.
This section powerfully describes the principle of lex talionis.
Yes, but it's not about revenge. It's the idea that wickedness carries the seed of its own destruction. The pit they dug and the net they hid for others become the traps that ensnare the wicked themselves.
It's poetic justice.
It is. It proves that God doesn't always need to strike from above. He often allows evil to consume itself.
This sounds almost like a natural law governing moral decay, that malpractice eventually leads to self-ruin.
It is a moral law built into the universe. The wicked are snared in the work of his own hands. And this is the ultimate self-revelation of God. God is known by the judgment which he executeth.
So his character and power become evident to everyone when the traps catch the trapsetter instead.
That's it.
This principle is so vividly illustrated by the story of Haman in Book of Esther. It makes the concept immediately concrete.
That story is the definitive case study of this psalm in action. Haman, a high official in Persia, despised the Jew Mordecai so much that he petitioned the king to have all the Jews in the kingdom exterminated.
Right.
But Haman wasn't satisfied with that. He went a step further, meticulously building a massive gallows, 50 cubits high, specifically to humiliate and hang Mordecai.
The ultimate trap, built with his own resources and malice.
Exactly. But through the intervention of Queen Esther, Haman's entire plot unraveled. And the climax, described in Esther 7, chapter 10, is that Haman was hanged on the very gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. This biblical anecdote confirms David's declaration. The wicked are snared in the work of their own hands.
And we can't overlook the musical interjection at the end of verse 16. Higeon, Selah. What is that instructing the original worshipers to do?
Well, Higeon generally means a meditative sound or solemn music, often associated with the harp. Selah commands a pause or a rest.
So together.
Together they instruct the musician and the worshiper to stop, play a deep, resonant chord, and meditate deeply on this powerful truth of divine justice. It's a mandatory moment of quiet contemplation. Let the reality sink in that God's system of justice ensures self-destruction for the wicked.
The modern practical takeaway for this is so clear. If the wicked are self-snaring, we don't need to lift a finger to seek revenge.
That's the liberation. We are free from the human temptation to seek personal revenge. When we see wickedness, we entrust the outcome to the judge, knowing that the trap is already set, and the wicked are doing the work themselves.
Our role is to witness his justice, not to execute it.
Or to interfere with the moral boomerang he has set in motion.
David now concludes by drawing the final, eternal contrast between the destiny of the ungodly and the secure, permanent hope of the humble believer.
That's right. He brings it all to a final verdict.
Verses 17 and 18 provide the definitive lines separating the ultimate outcomes of life. Here they are. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever.
The destination of the ungodly is stark. Hell, or Sheol, which in this context represents the grave, the unseen realm, and ultimately final separation from God.
And who goes there? All the nations that forget God. That phrase is critical.
It is, because to forget God here is not merely forgetting his name due to a lapse of memory or, cognitive frailty.
So if it's not forgetfulness, what is David warning against?
It is an active, willful choice to live as if God does not exist. It's practical atheism, setting up one's own authority, ignoring the judge on the prepared throne, and actively dismissing his claims on their lives. They are doomed not because they couldn't remember a name, but because they actively chose to disregard the ultimate reality of their creator and judge.
And this harsh reality is juxtaposed against a spectacular promise for those who have struggled in this life.
The contrast is magnificent. The promise is glorious. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever.
All the humiliations, the lack, the feeling of being overlooked, that is not the final story.
Not for the believer. Their hope, their expectation, the anticipation of future relief and righteousness is secure. It is eternal. It shall not perish forever.
This promise of ultimate hope for the poor connects beautifully with the teachings of Christ in the Beatitudes.
It provides the prophetic context for Jesus' declaration in Matthew 5, chapter 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The hope David speaks of is the eternal fulfillment of the kingdom, where the societal wrongs inflicted upon the humble are permanently righted, and true spiritual wealth is bestowed.
So this gives the listener the final, essential, long-term perspective.
It does. The practical takeaway is the ultimate long view. Our destiny is determined by the fundamental choice of whether we acknowledge the judge or actively forget him.
And it offers incredible assurance.
Profound, unshakable assurance to the struggling believer. God sees their current plight, and because he is eternal and just, their hope anchored in him is secure. What they expect will be realized and will never, ever perish.
And with that, David concludes with a final, powerful, and outwardly focused prophetic appeal. This is a prayer for God to intervene in the entire world system.
It is. He zooms back out to the global stage.
Let's read David's final, desperate cry for divine intervention in verses 19 and 20.
Arise, O Lord. Let not man prevail. Let the heathen be judged in thy sight. Put them in fear, O Lord, that the nations may know themselves to be but men. Selah.
Arise, O Lord, is the recurring cry in the Psalms.
It's a demand that God stop being passively seated and actively intervene to execute justice. David is asking God to stop mortal, frail man, let not man prevail, from winning against God's eternal plan. He is calling for global judgment.
But the motivation behind this prayer is not purely punitive. It's profoundly insightful. He asks God to put them in fear so that they may know themselves to be but men.
This is the core purpose of the prayer. It's not just about vengeance. It's about humility and theological realization.
Okay.
David wants the arrogant nations and proud leaders to be utterly humbled by divine power so that they are forced to confront their own mortality, their frailty, and their insignificance compared to the eternal, all-powerful God. He wants them to recognize their subordinate position. The goal is clarity.
That profound desire for God to reveal himself to a hostile, arrogant world is a common thread through the historical narratives.
Think of the grand spectacle on Mount Carmel. In 1 Kings 18, chapter 37, the prophet Elijah prays for God to answer by fire so that the people who are wavering and distracted by false gods may know that thou art the Lord God.
It's a prayer for visible, undeniable proof.
Exactly. Proof of God's sovereignty, designed to shatter human pride and unbelief. David is praying for that same realization on a global scale.
So as listeners facing global conflict or widespread arrogance today, what is the final applicable charge for our prayer lives based on these verses?
We should adopt David's petition. We must pray for God to intervene in the arrogance, the corruption, the conflicts we see around us, not just to make us comfortable, but specifically so that proud people and nations would be humbled, forced to recognize their own limitations.
And ultimately turn from their pride to acknowledge that God alone is God.
Exactly. And once again, that final Selah commands a moment of quiet reflection on the awesome, world-changing implications of that reality.
This detailed analysis of Psalm 9 has revealed a powerful strategic response to overwhelming fear and injustice. We learn that King David anchored his faith in the unshakable character of God, committing to wholehearted active praise even when facing the gates of death. We found comfort in God's dual role as the eternal and perfectly righteous judge who personally maintains our cause. And we took assurance from the fact that he is our unshakable refuge, certain that the expectation of the humble will never perish.
And if we must draw one final provocative conclusion from this material, let us return to the principle of self-destruction found in verse 16.
The wicked are snared in their own work.
Right. The knowledge that the wicked are destined to be snared in the work of his own hands should completely eliminate the human temptation to seek personal, active revenge. Our task is not to interfere with the system of divine justice by digging traps, retaliating, or wasting emotional energy on vengeance.
Our task is simply to declare his power.
To declare the power of the judge, who ensures that deliberate injustice ultimately consumes itself without any effort on our part.
A profound thought on which to anchor your understanding of sovereignty and self-control, drawn from the comprehensive series by the You Need Faith in Jesus team. To solidify your understanding of this lesson, be sure to use the flashcards to review key terms and then take the quiz. Passing the quiz will mark this lesson as complete.
Thank you for joining us for this in-depth study of the Scriptures.
Farewell, and continue your study with the You Need Faith in Jesus team.